If you could leave community leaders or aspiring developers with any one guiding principle, what would it be?
It would be start small and start with the people that you got around you. Start with the people you got, because the locals, I work in, you met me doing my work with Neighborhood Evolution, which is all over the country, and the teaching and coaching we do. So I had the need to go, at one point I wanted to be the biggest developer in the world, so I still have that in me. I wanted to go national, if you will, but I only do the work. I'm committed to the work only in my place, but I'm also committed now to take those lessons that I learned and spread them around the world, not to own places around the world and around the country, but to teach people that the locals, you can do this yourself. Mm-hmm. Do not wait for somebody to come to town, because there is nobody coming to save you.
Welcome to Housing Matters, the podcast that covers everything real estate, from buying your first home to building your investment portfolio. Hosted by me, Matt Pouliot, Pouliot Real Estate. Each episode brings expert insights, smart strategies, and real talk on housing and affordability. If it's about real estate, it matters here. Today, I'm thrilled to have joining us Monte Anderson, who is the president of Options Real Estate Investments, a multi-service real estate firm specializing in developing sustainable neighborhoods in southern Dallas and northern Ellis counties. He's also a founding member of Neighborhood Evolution, an organization that specializes in creating ecosystems between cities, small developers, and local citizens. He is both an advocate and a practitioner of incremental development, and is often found speaking and teaching across the country on cultivating local neighborhoods. Monte, there's a whole list of accomplishments and great projects that you've done, which we'll probably get into. I'm not going to dig in on the intro here into those, but I'm really thrilled to have you joining me. We only recently met at a conference here in Maine called Built Maine. The focus of this group is really to grow and increase housing opportunities in the state. And Monte came and spoke to the group of people. There was a large audience of folks there learning about the work that he's doing down in Texas. And I wanted very much to have him join Housing Matters today. So Monte, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Matt. Glad to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to jump right into it with you and talk about your local roots, kind of moving now to national impact and your path in real estate. Your roots have remained deep in the community that you grew up in, and your work, though, has now influenced people across the nation. Can you walk us through your career in real estate and how you began, and kind of what experiences shaped the mission and support for the underserved folks that you help?
Okay. Yeah, I grew up in the 70s, and during that period, we experienced, integration and busing and white flight, now black flight, and, people flighting from neighborhoods and things. And so when that first happened to me, when I was in the 7th grade, like our whole street, one day a new family moved into our whole street, and everybody on our street put their house up for sale all at once. And it was traumatic. I mean, it was like, here I'm a 7th grader, in school, and it was really, just crazy at the time. And I just didn't know what we were going to do. And my dad was one of those guys who said, we're not leaving. These are people are just like us. They just want better education. They want better neighborhoods, and they're here to get that. And you're going to learn how to, get to know these different people that are moving into our neighborhood. And we did, and we stayed there a long time. And so over the years, I began to question that, like, what happened to that neighborhood. And the thing that I came up with is that when you don't love your neighborhood, it's real easy just to abandon it. When we build these disposable neighborhoods, which is what that was, it's a lower middle class neighborhood, it's easy to abandon it. And so I didn't start off wanting to be a real estate developer. I started off actually racing motorcycles, and in the early days, I raced motocross, traveled all over the country as a kid, and I thought I was going to do that the rest of my life. So I didn't go get any education. So when those days were over and I was kind of broken up, broken bones, and had to get a real job, as my mom used to say, my dad was the only one who would hire me, and he was in the construction business, and he was sheetrocking malls. back then, and malls were still blowing and going. And, driving up and down the road from Louisiana to Mexico to, Oklahoma and all over Texas, hauling sheetrock was not fun. And I thought, I want to be the guy that owns the mall. And so I want to be this guy. I don't want to be these guys here. And so I started thinking like that very early on and figuring out how I can start um, getting into the real estate business. Well, I had no skills, so I started cleaning out warehouses, basically cleaning warehouses, big warehouses, and then over time, I worked with my dad, and we built some little concrete tilt wall buildings, from warehouses and things like that. And then one day, we're thinking, we couldn't. He was always telling me he couldn't get any work locally, and I said, well, why can't you get work? It's booming here. Why can't you get work locally? And he said, I don't know. I just can't get any. I said, well, I've got to figure that out. So I went down to the Chamber of Commerce and signed up, membership for one of the Chambers of Commerce and got heavily involved. I thought, where can I get business? So I got heavily involved in my community, like really heavily involved. And I chaired the chamber and I chaired the membership drive and I did cleanup days. I did all the stuff you do. I wanted to be a really good volunteer, for an organization. Of course, an organization like that just take you in if you're ready to, give your time. And what I learned was I could get business doing that. And early on, I built my business basically involved in my, around my community involvement, which became the first step of our 12 steps of town making book that you saw at the conference that I talked about. But so I started off as a real estate agent, going from cleaning warehouses. I thought, to a community volunteer. And I thought, well, I can be a real estate agent and get good businesses to come to South Dallas because the good businesses weren't coming here. I mean, this was basically the red line side of the city. This was the have-nots side of Dallas. But I thought, well, I could be a real estate agent and get business to come down here. And I couldn't get them to come. I couldn't. And so out of pure desperation, I started building small office buildings, a house or two here and there. And when I created my company, Options Real Estate, we not only did brokerage, leasing, we did building, property management, and development. We became this full service real estate company, kind of an old fashioned real estate company, if you will, because we had to do it all because you couldn't pay to have somebody else doing it. So these were kind of, I kind of got lucky and fell into this, in a way that showed me by committing to my community and becoming a town maker, which is really a full service real estate developer. I could make a living, I could make money, and I could do good at the same time. And that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to build lovable neighborhoods.
I absolutely love that. You don't know this, but our tagline at Pouliot Real Estate is selling homes, building community. And it's critically important that we, I think, as real estate professionals, do that work to make the place that we are serving a place that is desirable and frankly enjoyable for those that we serve to live. And it seemed to me, in listening to your presentation recently, that you really kind of live out an ethos pretty similar in the sense that you're not there just to practice real estate and do transactions. You're not really, you don't strike me as a transactional kind of guy, more of a transformational kind of guy, where you come in, you see something that others maybe have looked beyond. You see the potential in it and you get excited about solving the problem. And then the result is the community benefits.
That's really true. Now, don't get me wrong. I was as a real estate agent, I was doing like 170 transactions a year. So I did a lot of little bitty transactions, a lot of little ones. But I was a pretty good salesman, so I was always, hustling, and I was getting around, town and helping people find space and, helping them solve their problems, helping them buy buildings, those kind of things. So I had a really good base when I became a developer because I knew what it was like to lease up buildings, how to build them and sell them. I knew those. Without a tenant, right, or without an occupant, you got a bad real estate deal. So I was pretty good at filling up the buildings.
Well, that's a great segue to what I want to talk about next, which is, development and lessons that you've learned in that area. I mean, in North Texas, correct me if I'm wrong, you're doing most of your practice now more so in North Texas. Is that correct? Or still in
Yeah, everything's in
southern parts of
southern
Dallas?
Dallas. It's southern Dallas County, which is in North Texas. So,
Right.
and yeah, North Texas is a booming area right now, but the part of Dallas I live in has not always been that way.
Yeah, I'm curious, and why is that so? I mean, Dallas in the 70s, things were not moving, not grooving. It sounds like from what you're saying, and things have really come about in that area. What's going on with development in terms of housing and sprawl?
Well, and Dallas is a city. It's a wealthy, it's a wealthy city with a lot of wealth here, and it was an oil and financial city coming out of the 60s and 70s, and but the wealth was all in the north of what we call the Trinity River, which kind of splits Dallas, the city of Dallas, Dallas County, into two halves. And the south part of Dallas County was really much of it was redlined. There was white flight, sprawl. There was not a lot of thought in good development. Except for the stuff built before 1950. In the 40s, 30s, and 40s, the stuff that was built back then. So it was kind of the leftover area, which is funny because it's the size of Atlanta. Southern Dallas County. It's like the size of
Hmm.
Atlanta,
Wow.
and so it was kind of it was where basically where poor less affluent people lived. The schools that weren't as good. They went from from the city of Dallas. You went to the next first ring suburbs. And then those over in the 80s, like 90s over there, then those went to the second ring suburbs. And so now it's kind of a melting pot now, and it's gentrifying now in some of the parts, harshly, I might say, up closer to the city, harshly, but it's gentrifying, and people have gotten over different racial, you know, issues, and people are kind of moving back together in different areas, and so we're seeing some good things happen. And I was kind of on the forefront of that because what my dad taught me early on, I was
Hmm.
like way ahead of the game of because what I did back in those days accidentally was I had a kind of an experience happen to me, and I committed to staying in Southern Dallas County my whole life, and working, my whole life. So I committed myself to
What
this
happened?
place. Just well, um, I guess I can tell you. During the time, probably during the early '90s, I had decided that I was sick of living down here. I mean, I was sick of living in a place that was, the poverty and, people selling dogs on the streets, and I was just sick of all of this. And I had decided, there was a big science project here done by the federal government called the superconducting supercollider that was here, and it was one of those big gigantic ring, and they ran the atoms around and smashed them together, and they canceled that. That this was after the big George Bush president when he was president. That was all going on. He was a Texan, and then the Clinton
Hmm.
administration came along, and then they canceled that project. Congress canceled the project, and so we had a little bit of a um, a recession after that. After one recession hit and then another one after that, everybody left. And I decided I was leaving, and I was going to move to a city in the north of Dallas, the more affluent city where it was clean and people looked more like me and all of that. And I was going to leave. And then one day I went there, and I did good in business and made money, in my life. And then one day I died and went to heaven, and, God's sitting behind a desk. He's sitting behind a desk, and he's passing out jobs,
Uh-huh.
and he's looking at me, and he's looking down at me, and he's like he's reading my chart, like looking at me, and he's shaking his head, and he I'm thinking, wait a minute, I'm a good worker. I get up at 4 a.m. and I work till late at night. I'm dedicated, I'm loyal, I'm a good worker. I'm going to get this job. He looked at me and he said, I don't know if I can trust you, because when I needed you most in your community, you bailed out on me. You moved
Wow.
away. And so options real estate means no options. I had no options. So from that day forward, all my options were taken away. And
See, the best stories are when people choose to share. Thank you.
so I'm not always sure I want to share that, but but I do. But it did, and it worked out really good for me because I've done some crazy projects based on my total commitment to place, which changes the way you think about something. When
Yeah,
you
because
commit
right,
to a community,
that's really, I think, an important point I want to circle on for just a minute because, it's too easy to chase different opportunities in development, for instance, right? Once you understand how to do development, you could apply that in any kind of market. I know guys that do development here that are like, hey, we're looking at doing deals in Texas. Why?
yeah,
Because it's booming down there. Well, yeah, but Maine needs 84,000 homes. So what are we doing to solve this problem up here? It seems shiny object, and it's even more so in the world we live in with social media to get sucked away to these different really seemingly exciting things which people pencil things out, they look good and so forth on paper, but what kind of impact is that having on the community? It seems like there's two kinds of developers that I've come across in this work. One that's really just focused on the bottom line. How can I maximize return? I'm going to go to whatever asset's easiest to get my money the fastest. And other developers, what I would say, like you, that are focused on what's my impact going to be from this work that I'm doing.
yeah, it's you're right there. I mean, it's like you know they don't need me in this other place I was going to move to in North Dallas. I mean, they probably don't need me in Maine because I don't know anything about it. So I don't. But they needed me here in my own home, and I knew this place. I rode my bicycle up and down the streets.
Yeah.
As a kid, I knew the lay of the land, just like a farmer. We call it farming in our step number one in our town making book, but and it's farming. It's just like a farmer. I mean, a farmer knows their fields and knows everything, and you get good at everything. I mean, I know stuff. You can quiz me on just about anything in Southern Dallas, and I can probably tell you something about it. I just know things, and it's an instinct. It's instinct, and I'm very much an instinctive type developer. I follow my instincts really close, so I'm likely to do a boutique hotel in the hood.
Mhm.
I'm likely to take over a shopping center that just abandoned, nobody wants, or move into a really part of the city where there's 90% poverty and put entrepreneurial incubator type spaces in where people will say, well, there's no entrepreneurs down there. People are too poor. Well, people that are really poor, they're actually very good entrepreneurs. They've been used to hustling and scraping and doing side jobs and doing things, a lot. So I would come across things from a different standpoint where I was building for the long term, and I would do crazy stuff because again I had the spirit on my side too. I mean, I had luck on my side. I would rather be lucky than good, and I
Mhm.
I just got lucky with things. And people here will quite often. A guy told me just 2 days ago. He said, every time I talk to somebody about you, they think you're the guy that will do any crazy thing. And over my period of being here, knock on wood, I never had a bankruptcy and never had a foreclosure, ever.
Yeah.
And we've gone through several booms and busts, when many people, went through, those kind of things. So
You feel like that's
and
luck or that you plan it out ahead of time to be successful, and then it looks like luck.
well, you know what they say, luck is it's hard work and opportunity crossing paths, but luck in the way that I'll stand out here on the street corner or stand around my neighborhood and go, okay, what's missing? Like, what's missing in this neighborhood? What do I need to focus on? What can I? And then from there, I'll quite often look for the opportunity. What's the opportunity? The opportunity is a building that's ugly or bad or a piece of property or something that needs help. And
So
then
I'm
I'll
curious.
match the market with that, what we need, kind of match those things together.
So you're going and reducing your risk by listening to what people in your community need and then going and building that. So, for instance, somebody or
Uh-huh.
repurposing a space for them.
Yeah. Yeah. Quite often doing development incrementally like I do, I can begin to build something and let it evolve or let it evolve. I much really rather rebuild something that's already there. You know, I like, because I'm an environmentalist also, so I'm like, how do we save these buildings without putting them in the landfill? So how do we do that? So I'm always saving buildings, even though they're not very good buildings. And so
I'm
how do
curious,
we?
how do you create systems around that? Because, you know, like I do development work. I'm sitting in a building now that got historic preservation tax credits, was redeveloped through those, but it was a one-off deal, you know? And so like trying to scale that seems a lot harder than being a tract builder who comes up with 4 or 5 home designs and then just gets a field and starts slamming them out there.
Yeah, so we're like a community development corporation for profit.
Uh-huh.
You know, CDCs, you might hear of CDCs around the country, community development corporations, and that's what we are. So we look at what really looks bad on here on Main Street or in this suburb we're in, like this shop. I'm in a shopping center right now, a 90,000 square foot shopping center built in the 60s that
Mhm.
was abandoned, you know, and I'm rebuilding it and restoring it and then putting townhomes in the middle of the parking lot out front. So somebody said,
Oh,
well, hi,
cool.
you're putting and they're townhomes for sale in the parking lot. So people will have some wealth in. So you're looking at things that what are those market needs? First of all, you're looking at what is the opportunity. Here's an ugly building right by City Hall, right by a park, right by the schools. That's all good, right? That's good. It's ugly. It's cheap. It's cheaper. Now, what can we do with it that the community needs? What are the needs of the community? What's missing? We're
Mm.
missing some restaurants. Well, can we get a really good restaurant? No, we can't get a big sit down Thai restaurant, but we can get a small Thai takeout place. So,
Mhm.
you know, we can't get Starbucks coffee here, but we got a donut shop that served better coffee.
It's interesting
So,
listening to you talk about this because my perception from Maine, you were here, you visited, hopefully you had a good
yeah,
time.
yeah, I did. I love
Yeah.
Maine. It was beautiful. I mean, it's like
It's a beautiful
beautiful.
place.
Yeah.
And my perception is like from being up here of Dallas would be, geez, anything I do in Dallas is going to take off because there's just so much people, so many people, and so much growth, and it just seems like, you know. And I feel like many times people get drawn to different development opportunities, either an investor or doing their own, based on some of those things, as opposed to I'm curious, like kind of what did you see when you were here? Did you feel like there might have been opportunity in this area if you were doing deals around here?
Oh yeah, and Skowhegan. Is that how you say it? Skowhegan?
Yeah,
Yes, that's good.
yeah.
Uh, which was quite lovely, you know, with the falls and the place there. I mean, you just don't see that here. You know, we don't see
Uh-huh.
that down. But it was quite. Yeah, what I saw was like you got to give people what they want. How do you get, for instance, in Skowhegan, had a hard time finding a good restaurant, really. Or there was a couple, and I was there for, you know, 3 days or 2.5 days there. And, you know, you run out of restaurants to go to and nothing's open very late. So what do you do to get a good restaurant in? So if I call a restaurateur and say, hey, come to Skowhegan and I'll rent you a space over here, the restaurateur is going to say, okay, I'll only come to Skowhegan if you give me a year's free rent. If you'll do all my finish out, you'll give me cheap rent or percentage rent only, or give me all this stuff. Or I can take a different approach. I could say, okay, Mister, and I'm talking about a good restaurant, you know, like a really good chef owned, like low,
Uh-huh.
you know, boutique kind of restaurant. Okay, Mister, Mrs. Restaurateur, what if you'll come to Skowhegan, I'll help you own a building. I'm going to help you own a building. I want you to come invest and be here, live here, you know, come and own this building. And so, as a community development, you know, town maker, I'm now talking to the city saying, hey, we can get this really great restaurant here, but we got to help him own a building. So we may have to loan him some down payment. We may have to grant him some stuff or give him some tax abatement. I don't know, whatever it is, whatever tools we can pull out of our toolbox, we need to pull out and give them to this guy. And I just did this. There's a project I just did like that in Duncanville here because we couldn't get anything but, I mean, the best we could get was a Chick-fil-A. You know, it's like,
Hey, that would be
really?
a big restaurant for us.
But Chick-fil-A is, you
I
know,
know.
it's like it's really over itself because they're expanding now, and I don't think it's a real good thing. But anyway, that's the approach
It'd
I
be
would take.
interesting to see if they end up opening on Sundays. Like, how committed are they to it?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how they evolve, because when they were rare, they were better. And now that they're
Yeah.
starting to build so many of them, I'm noticing the quality go down. I don't even eat at them anymore. I won't even eat now that they're abundant. Because they're everywhere here now.
I
But
think what
yeah,
you
that's
just
how you
said though
get.
about Chick-fil-A is an interesting parallel to the work you're doing because, it's rare that you have people that come forward and say, "Hey, I have a model for you that involves you owning, this real estate. Can you walk us through that model a little bit? And like, how does that work?" Because in my mind, when I heard about that at the Built Maine, I'm like, how does he structure that? I'm curious.
So here's how it works. So, and I've done several different scenarios of this, but I'll give you one. I'll give you the one I just did with these guys. So here's a building on Main Street, a building just the right size for this restaurant. There's our opportunity. It's ugly. Okay. It needs to be gutted. But it's in a great location. It's in a perfect location. So here's the building. The operator I knew from another city, he wanted to open up two restaurants, one for him and one for his wife. They're both in the business. Perfect, perfect scenario. I said, come down here and lease in my new project that I've got. No way. I'm not coming. And I said, well, what would get you to come? He said, if I can own a building. Okay. Do you have any money? Not much. Do you have good credit? Yes, I have good credit. Do you have good financials? Yes, my financials are good. Okay. So got skills. He's got good skills, got good financials, got good credit. Okay. Got the operations, two husband and wife. They can each take a restaurant. Got good, got good bones to it. We just don't have any capital. So I got the city of Duncanville to grant him. It was like $1,375,000 deal. I got the city of Duncanville to grant him $300,000, which is a
Wow.
large amount for one. But I said that my sales to them was, you do this once, the next one we'll only have to give 200. The next one after that we'll only have to give them 100, and then eventually we don't have to give anything. But
Mhm.
we need an anchor. We need a good anchor in this area. We need, a special anchor. Assume this is a special entrepreneur. Then
Mhm.
we went to the bank to get him a loan. And the bank wouldn't loan but 50% on the deal. That's made it impossible. So then we went to the CDFI, which is a community non-for-profit bank. I don't know if y'all have CDFIs up
Oh
there,
yeah,
but
we do. Yeah.
okay. So
They
went to the
bought the tax
CDFI.
credits for this project, actually.
So they bridged the gap. They went from 50. They took us from 50 to 75, and the grant from the city took us, from 75 to 100. Next thing you know, we had a deal. We just closed on the property, but it took us 7 months to get it done for a not that big a deal. Now we're starting construction on the property, and I brokered the deal, so I made money brokering the deal on the purchase of the property. And then secondly, I'm getting paid as a developer, not a large fee, as a developer builder to build it
Yeah.
for them. And so with that, I will use my staff. We're not a general contractor, but we do our own building. So I will use my staff person, maybe similar to how you build a house. So I use somebody on my staff that runs construction. I use my architects to look over our shoulder. So, and then the buyer, the entrepreneur. So we have this kind of like triangle builder. So it's a do it yourself. So you have the entrepreneur, the architect, and us. And together we build this. They take the risk. The lender let us do this because we have so much experience here. If this is if I was a new developer 30 years ago, or, it would have been tougher, but I can get away with that now, and I mean, I have a lot of construction background. So, but I'm not a general contractor and don't even really like to build that much. But
So if somebody were to look at this through the lens of, hey, I want to do straight up market project, but I want to acquire this person and give them ownership into it, are they then just structuring and proposing maybe a lease with an option to buy or like a certain amount of incremental ownership? How do you structure those?
well, I don't do those. What I would do if I had to borrow money or people had to use my credit, let's just say I have another one. In fact, I think I showed this at Bill Maine. This was a barber. and I had to use my credit and my down payment to get there. So I kept myself in the LLC. So I was a partner in the LLC. So I controlled it as long as my credit was on the line and they owed me the down payment. So once they got me off the credit and off the down payment, I was out.
Okay, yeah. So
So
you
that's
went and structured essentially an LLC or a limited partnership where people are involved, and then you're out.
Yeah, and so
okay.
they were in it from the beginning though with me, and they signed on the note with me too.
Yeah.
So they were personally committed to it. It wasn't just a lease with the option to purchase. They were in it, and that was the thing I wanted. I mean, I wouldn't do this just any place. I only do it in my farm, first of all, and I would only do this probably with what I would call a legendary occupants, legendary tenant, legendary business people.
What do you mean by that? Just people that have a good following already?
People that are like, have you ever been to that barber down on Main Street? I mean, he's, do you know this? Don't even know his name. But
yes, I go to that barber every day.
So you got that, or you know that restaurant. Have you ever been down to that greasy diner down down in South Dallas? Have you ever been down there? It's been there forever. It's that legendary. It's
really interesting what you're talking about, because we have this downtown in Augusta, the capital city of Maine, where I've lived my whole life, been doing a lot of projects here. And I always am talking to the team about becoming the mayor of the community. It's probably because I served 12 years in the legislature and I'm a recovering politician now, but it's important to get around, and get to, yeah, I know, it's all right. I did my time in purgatory. So but I had a friend who about 15 years ago reached out to a diner that was in a strip mall and was getting very tired. And he said, hey, I've got this building in downtown Augusta that I bought. I'm renovating the upper floors to make apartments for me to live in, but will you come in downstairs? And they were like, no. And then he said, well, I'll give you free rent for 5 years if you do a fit up of the space, So the diner came in, did a fit up, and then they're still there in that location, extraordinarily successful. But that was expensive, in terms of free space. Obviously, they did a build out, which would stay with the building. But my point in sharing that is I had to get super creative and look through a lens that most landlords wouldn't say no rent. I'm sure there's probably a better way to structure that.
Yeah.
But essentially just giving something away to get them in.
So what I would have done in that case there was I would have made him a partner and had him pay more rent, more than average rent. I'd have made him a partner, and I'm partner with tenants a lot too. I've done. There's 100 different ways we could talk here for 2-3 hours on just the way. So I've got another project called Tyler Station where I had a young carpenter, welder, entrepreneur, artist, and he had tried his art and he didn't make any money, and he made money picking up scrap furniture off the street and turning it into furniture. And so he was a gritty guy, and he wanted to open up a maker space and all this. And I said, I don't really want to do a maker because I don't want to be responsible for table saws and welders. And I mean, he goes, no, I'll be responsible for that. I said, why don't we do this? Why don't we partner on a building? You be the tenant, the occupant. You can teach people let people use their equipment that that can use it inside of your space. In other words, you could sublease space out under you in there, and I'll give you a piece of the deal. But you got to sign a lease with me for 10 years at this rate, and that's your entry in. And he's such a young, he was young, hotshot, good guy, knew a lot of people and stuff. And so he kind of set the vibe for the place. He had other young people he knew. He brought some things to the table. And most landlords, most developers do not want to do this. They do not want to do this. But I mean, I got people that have been there. These people have been there forever. And then when I get ready to sell and leave, which is a developer, I'm still a typical developer. I'm going to one day, I just don't sell so fast, flip, but I'm still a typical developer. I got to sell something to move on and build something else. But he's already set up to be one of the buyers for that, maybe with some other tenants. And I help them put together the money, and then I make money selling to them.
Right.
So I make,
this is not because you're helping create a middle class.
Yes,
and not hoarding all of that wealth creation to yourself. Instead, you're democratizing this process
yeah,
in a way that is more accessible to more people who most of the time go to a bank and they're like, no, no, thank you. Leave now.
that's right. Chuck Marone was interviewing on a podcast the other day. He was interviewing a guy named Connor Darty from the New York Times, and they got to talking about me. It's one of his latest podcasts. And Chuck Marone of Strong Towns, you know who Chuck is.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
Chuck was saying he couldn't understand how I made money. He couldn't understand at first. It took him several years. And I make money a bunch of different ways. I make money managing properties. I make money leasing. I pay myself. I pay Options Real Estate is a service provider for all my partnerships.
Yeah.
So this is not uncommon. So I'll have an LLC that'll own this property and another one, this one, and I'm the manager of those LLCs. And then they hire Options Real Estate to do the management, the leasing, the construction, the development. And we don't always get our money up front in the beginning when there's not enough cash flow. You might, one property, I got all my development fee 10 years after I had it when I sold it. I didn't get it until I sold it. So, I mean, that does happen. It's not planned. I didn't plan, but that he said, so I make money, little pieces there. And then I need to sell things once in a while to get bigger chunks of money so I can do another risky project. I have to. So, probably I could make more money, if I was doing apartments, building them with, venture capital and building them, filling up and selling them to the Ohio State Teacher Pension Fund, which is common here in
Yeah.
Dallas. It is common. And Dallas is booming, but not all of Dallas is booming. Southern Dallas is some of the highest poverty in the country. And some of our child poverty and stuff, some of our neighborhoods that have been left behind or split apart by freeways going through the area. But so we make money in a lot of different places, and it's not the easiest thing to do. It's not the easiest thing to do, but I got to look back at the end of my life, and you think about this. I have granddaughters now. I had grandkids really young and had kids really young too. And my mother's still alive. My grandmother died not very long ago. So, think about one day my granddaughters coming up when they're about 40 years old, and maybe I'm still alive, at that time. And they're saying, you know, they call me Swimming Pawpaw because I had a swimming pool. So they call me, they said, Swimming Pawpaw, what did you, when you built this stuff out here, what did you think about us? You built these crappy shopping centers, bad apartments. Is this what you thought about us? And so I think about that every day when I build something. Am I going to be able to answer that question when they come up? How am I going to answer that question? Did I think about you when I built it or rebuilt it? Were you even in my mind when I recycled this building? Or did I just pour a bunch more concrete out here that the city couldn't afford to keep up, and it didn't last? I built disposable, which that's a problem down here in the Northeast, in the Midwest. So many beautiful cities and neighborhoods. And down here, though, being younger, we built so many disposable, sprawling, suburban sprawling neighborhoods. And now I'm trying to reuse some of that stuff was not done very well. And
You keep going right into my next question, like so seamlessly, Monty. This is
well,
perfect. It is kind of interesting listening to you because oftentimes I feel like I'm listening to myself, maybe a more wise version of myself down the road speak, because we both live a life with purpose. It's clear in listening to your words that you believe that there is a sense of purpose in the work that you do, and the reason why you do it is bigger and about legacy more so than just about dollars and cents. And in doing that work, you're looking a lot of times at revitalizing, old buildings or forgotten lots that many people have just overlooked. Can you share a little bit with the listeners about a specific project that looked like it had like almost no promise, but for whatever reason, you're like, I'm doing this, and it ended up becoming a vital part of the neighborhood?
oh my goodness, that's every project I do just about. So that's actually, I got a couple on the drawing board right over here right now. I just put up here, but there was one that I like to talk about. It's the Texas Theater in Dallas, Texas, where Oswald was captured after he allegedly shot President Kennedy. And that we know today that Oswald did not shoot President Kennedy. He didn't, he did. And I've known this for many years. I've been
That'll
studying.
be on podcast episode 97. We'll have you
There you
back to
go.
unpack that.
So back in the late 90s, the Texas Theater was in really bad condition. And we took it on as a volunteer. I was chairman of an organization called the Oak Cliff Foundation, where it was at. And we had to raise money, through, philanthropy and grants and, CBDG grants, from the federal government and things like that and it took us, we started in 1999. I started on it in 1999. In fact, in the history books, you can see my real estate sign out in front of it, in my old logo. So it was, and then we didn't open it for 10 years. We couldn't get it open because right after 99, 9/11 hit and all the, any of the grants, any money like that. And it took us 10 years. And finally one day, and 10 years down the road, we're struggling. I'm tired of going to board meeting. I'm tired of working on this thing. I've just had it. I just can't get it open. And finally one day I said, you know what, Monty, you're a real estate man. At least you have no debt on it, or very little debt. $3,000 a month, I think we had. Lease it out. So we leased it to a young bunch of filmmakers who were selling films, and they were in film and stuff, and we leased it to them. And they leased it from us for a couple, 3 years. And then they wanted to add another balcony to it. They wanted to add some stuff to it. So we were going to have to raise some more money, and I didn't want to do that. So we sold it to them for nearly nothing. But we had it landmarked and on the National Registry where you could never tear it down. We did our job, and then now we put it back in the hands and put it back on the tax rolls. And now today, it was one of the only single screen, now it's 2 screens, movie theaters in the country that was actually cash flowing. Wow. But we used money as a nonprofit to build it and fix it up. And we talked to our donors before we sold it, because he said, here's the way we can sustain
because
it.
they're playing the repeat of the documentary and the conspiracy of who killed Kennedy.
No, but they would play that. But no, they play with 2 screens. They could play, when you made your money showing Spider-Man, right? So, but when you had Spider-Man, you made the money for the first 4 days, and then you had 3 weeks after that you lost. You couldn't make, and they couldn't take it out. So when they put 2 screens in there, they could take the Spider-Man movie and move it up and put their art films, downstairs, because it's an art film theater. They have a lot of art film, and so they have both. They have a bar in there now, and it's a very strategic place and a really good, one of our fewer good urban areas, Jefferson Boulevard in Oak Cliff, which is a really good area. So it was one of those that were just, and it's into a blighted area that's now booming and thriving, and and I did a hotel the same way, a boutique motor court hotel. And taken this shopping center I'm in, it's the same way.
I think that for as we move forward, this particular kind of work that you're doing is going to become more and more important, because we have more and more spaces that have been created as we become an older country, right? And so the days of sprawling to meet the needs of the cars and the highway system and everything, I think, now millennials and certainly Gen Z and after, my son now, who's 10 months old, Generation Alpha, it's like, these kids are going to grow up or have grown up in a world in which we've had so much transformation so quickly as a human race into an age of abundance, really, in America for some, but certainly not for all. And it's like we have these spaces that we've created that were a lot of times a function of what someone's wealth was or what they had going on, socially and so forth. And now we're becoming more interconnected. And in that, is a desire for people to stop and ask questions like, is this good for the environment? I don't think that as many people were asking that question in the 1960s when concrete and highways were going everywhere. And so now this brings about, the need to repurpose buildings and reuse things, but that is often at odds with codes. and things that also didn't exist when baby boomers were really growing this country rapidly. We didn't have to worry about a second means of egress, a sprinkler system, and all these kinds of things. So, are there times in which, a property is just not worth it because of the code requirements, or are you kind of a believer that, hey, if I have a piece of land and a shell or a structure, then I can go to work to find the right user and do the right things to make something work in that building?
Yeah. That pretty much is the second way. It's like most of the time most of the developers, especially in this part of the country, your part of the country, people are more used to restoring old buildings because they've got good old buildings to do that in. Like Bernice Radel, my partner in Buffalo, she's got beautiful buildings, to restore. And here we don't. But the problem is here, if you tear it down, probably in our neighborhoods, now in the affluent neighborhoods of North Dallas, you can tear it down and just build a new one. There's enough money, there's enough rents, you can just do that. Here you can't. You tear it down here, nothing will get built back for 20 years.
Yeah,
and I know that.
Construction.
And they can't, and the city will come along and end up buying it, and they'll tear it down, and then nothing will happen forever, and then they'll have to give the land away. In this case here, if the structure's got any decent bone to it at all, if it's got, we can add stuff to it. We can move a building closer to the road to create better form. I have a way of doing that. We can do inner blocks, and this one here is U-shaped, and so we put the townhomes are in a block in the middle. We're partnering with Habitat, who's got a new 80% loan, like a middle income loan. So what it causes us to do, and this is the thing about the 12 steps and the commitment to place. If you commit to a place, you're going to get the answer. It's going to come. It's like, what do I got to do? What is the best thing to do for now and the future for this earth? What is the best? And my pocketbook too, that's a part of that, because if that doesn't work, then the rest of it don't work. I'm one and done. I've seen a lot of people that are one and done, and it's, and so it causes you to have to think. If I had too much money, I would be really stupid person because I wouldn't have to think. I would tear it all down and just build a fancy whatever, mixed use apartment building. And, I would do probably stupid things that just don't look very good and don't. This way I have to do it incrementally. I have to do it over time. I have to reuse things. I have to think hard. I have to get the community involved. I have to talk to city council people. And it truly is a village. We like to say if it takes a village to raise a child, it takes the whole community to build one of these buildings. So I really have to have that whole community surrounding me as part of my ecosystem.
Yeah, and you wrote the 12 Steps of Town Making, a blueprint for bottom-up development. And that's a framework, for better places from the ground up. Can you walk us through what some of those most critical steps are? I think we heard a little bit about becoming the mayor of the community and farming and certain. And what are some?
Getting the step one is really getting that farm, and then step two is getting to know your people. Step three is about finance and becoming attractive to finance. Think about this: how many times have you ever been turned down for a loan?
Yeah.
Okay, I have too. It's not fun, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't.
It's not. It sucks.
Hurts my feelings. Makes me feel lower than, and I can only imagine what new developers must feel like when they come in. The bank just goes, "Yeah, we're not going to loan you any money." It's like But step three is how to be attractive to money, and you can't just decide and read some affirmations and be attractive. You have to become it. You have to clean up your act. You have to clean your financials up, even if you don't have money. But how do you interview bankers? How do you interview investors instead of begging bankers or begging people to come? How do you get money on your terms? How do you resist taking deals that are bad? And then how to have step four is how to have the right kind of attorneys and CPAs. Without my consultants, without my CPAs and my attorneys, my self-esteem is down here. I can't read that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I don't read stuff very good. Mm-hmm. I can see financials. I just know how much we have in the bank. It's like, how much did we spend? How much is in the bank? Step 5 is, starting small. You got to start small. You got start small. This is a business of practice. Like we practice law, we practice medicine. This business, this is not as this being a builder, this is not a part-time, gig. This is a hard, complex, business. Step 6, I learned to clean up. I learned to strip buildings down and clean them up and look at them before I finish designing. I let the buildings tell me things. I let them tell me where to put in, where to cut holes in the wall to create new storefronts, or where I can do it without breaking the bank. And I can't do that till I can see it good. I strip it down and look at it. It's getting the right team together, the right size team, the right architect, the right engineer. Not, if I'm doing fourplexes, I don't need somebody that's been designing hospitals. Deciding on the right construction method. What is the right method? Is it me being a general contractor? Is it me doing my own? Is it, do I have an architect that can, hold me, help me? How do I do those things? How to activate spaces? How to lease the spaces? How to find the right occupant? Maybe a building is an opportunity, but it's not good to lease. It's better if I fix it up and sell it, just like a home builder does. It's no different than a home builder. How to manage, how to manage the property. I mean, you can't start off without. If you're bad at bookkeeping, you better find you a part-time bookkeeper. If you're bad at, and then, basically, and then 12-step is helping others. It's just like a 12-step program that you would see for Alcoholics Anonymous or Overeaters or whoever. In helping others, you're not only you're serving on your state legislature, you're serving on your council, you're helping the cleanup program. You're starting a 12-step group around your neighborhood. You're helping other people. Nobody ever taught me the secret handshake growing up in South Dallas. Okay, how to get money. My dad said, "The rich get richer, and it's not us." It's not, and so I couldn't go for that. I said, "There's got to be a way for us to break through," but nobody told me that. And I can tell you, so many entrepreneurs I know just need to be told that, what, you can do this. Here's a step-by-step. Here's 12, here's a step-by-step. Here's how you do it. And men, I mean, tell you, men don't do as good because men don't follow the instructions. There's a lot of really
right
good,
to the finish line.
right to the finish. And the women do better. There's a lot of women and women of color that are being small developers these days because they're following the instructions. They're following, and us men, we just got to.
Well, I think that this is really interesting, and this can tie into, yes, as guys, we want to jump right to the end, and I always want to jump right to the next question, but every time you're feeding into them so well, you were just talking about how, you want to become a developer. Here's your 12 steps: start small, build a team. But I'm wondering how many people, and to your point of what your father had said to you, that you serve with or work with see themselves as a developer. Because the last time I checked, the K-12 education system doesn't talk at all about real estate development or how to use. Yet at the core of what it is to be successful in the United States for many, many, many very wealthy people is an understanding of real estate and tax law. And it's just something that we don't talk about in school at all. And so does it start first with telling the person that, hey, you're smart enough, you've got what it takes to do this?
That's a really good question. And it's one I'm really learning right now. So it's perfect the way you thought about this. So where I'm at right now, I'm across the street from an 8th grade school. And I've been saying for years, why aren't we teaching 8th graders about this business? Because they're the one wait a minute, why are we not asking them what to build? Because they're the ones that are going to be in these buildings that we're building. It don't matter about us. We're done.
Yeah.
As far as that building goes, we're done. I mean, we're building now for somebody else. So why aren't we asking them? So we have these 8th grade girls that come over here, and it's fairly, lower middle class neighborhood. And they go to this 8th grade school, and we did co-working next to our office. And so we're trying to get people to come in here in the beginning and, just be around. We rented up all the little offices, but we didn't have the open desk that occupied. So told these girls that come by, come on in every morning and have some hot chocolate and some coffee and whatever you want and some snacks. And a lot of them don't have money. So they were like eager after they got to know us, after they didn't think I was some creepy old guy trying to give them candy, or something. So I had had the
Get rid
girls
of those tinted windows on the van.
had the girls in the office kind of help them come in, and so they got to know them. After a while, and I'd ask them how they're, what are you learning today? What are you doing? And so I said to them one day, they said, well, what do you do? And I said, well, look, let me ask you something. See this building across the street over there? Who do you think owns that building? And they got no idea who owns it. I said, how would you like to own that building? I said, how would you you own that building? Then these tenants, see these tenants here, these people, this pet store and this pizza joint and this place, they have to rent, they have to pay rent. And they pay rent 24 hours a day. So while I'm sleeping at home at night, they're paying rent. So I'm making income as I sleep. I'm not having to work 24 hours a day for that income. I said, people like you own those buildings, average people in many cases. And I said, you can actually own a building. I said, and let's listen to this. You don't even have to go to college to be a builder or owner of this building. Now, you need to get educated. So you got to know about math and English. You got to be able to write. You got to be able to talk to people. You got to be able to, express yourself. You got to be able to do this thing. But a lot of these kids are not going to be going to college. They're just not the neighborhood that's got to be going to college. I said, but you can actually do that without a college degree. You can actually own this city, own these buildings. And they couldn't believe it.
It's like Rich Dad, Poor Dad should be required
same
reading
thing.
in order to graduate with a 100% test score.
Rich Dad, Poor Dad and Think and Grow Rich, from Napoleon Hill. I mean, Think and Grow Rich has got Think and Grow Rich for women now, and Think and Grow Rich a Black choice. And, and Rich Dad, Poor Dad's these are all saying the same, they're, saying the same things. Even the commitment to place, commit your life to something.
We're talking about this now. I'm 38 years old. I spent 6 years on the education committee developing public policy for public education in Maine. And the one thing that I'm really most proud about is getting financial literacy in order to graduate. But there's no way with local control in schools we could ever say, thou shalt give a student Think and Grow Rich, free, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, any of these before you graduate. You just can't do it. So I never read those until I graduated from high school. I think I was like 19 when I read Think and Grow Rich, and those certainly sent me on a different trajectory that I feel very blessed and fortunate for, with a lot of hard work, but also the mindset piece of that. My dad got up every day at 3:30 and went to build the warships for this country, and he's still there. He's one of the hardest working people I know, but never taught us any of these things that would separate or be able to start separating from chasing after a 9-to-5 paycheck, which is important and should be still, I think, supported in this country. But also, by the way, here are some tools that you can earn some passive income to help support yourself a little bit and maybe be a little bit safer financially.
Yeah, you're exactly right. I mean, I don't understand it. So I don't understand people say we have a housing problem in this country. And I say we don't have a housing problem. Housing is a symptom of the problem. The problem is we don't make enough money. The problem is we're trying to get people tax incentives for low income housing or whatever that is, but we're not doing near enough to create entrepreneurs and to create extra income. Even if you're just a little bit, even if you got a 9-to-5 and you got another side hustle, over here that you can do, and you could own a house and rent 2 rooms out, or have we're just not teaching people to think like that, and we're not teaching them to. And the lower the income, what I found, and then I have a homeless intake center I worked on, in one of my low income shopping centers over here. And they asked me to come over and talk to a bunch of homeless women one day in there. And I said, how am I going to relate to these homeless women? These are street, and they said, well, just come over and talk to them about what you do. And the first thing I said to them, I said, is there anybody in here that would like to own their own business? You know what? Every single person raised their hand.
Really? Interesting.
You know what? They already own their own business. They're street hustlers.
Right.
They're cleaning somebody's house for $100. They're, walking somebody's dog. They're watching, I had a lady sit and watch a project for me all night long while we were exposed with some copper and stuff. I mean, they're making $50 here and $10 there and selling a dress here and buying some old stuff and reselling it. I mean, they're already doing it.
Hmm.
And so, my maintenance guy and my housekeeper, they both came over across from Mexico. They were making $8 and $10 an hour in my hotel. I had a hotel. This is 20 years ago, when I first met them. And when I sold my hotel in 2015, and they wanted to go with me, they didn't want to stay at the hotel. I said, I don't really want to hire a bunch of people in my deal. But I tell you what to do. Let me help you start your own business. You start your own maintenance and construction company. You start your own housekeeping company. Today, and it was just luck that happened again. That had happened to me. I kind of thought about it, but there today, the housekeeper lady, when she comes in to negotiate with me, she gets on her fancy dress and brings her Gucci bag with her. Okay. She still cleans, but she's now making 100 and something thousand a year in her business. And he's
I
making
love it.
250 or 300,000 a year. He's got brand new pickups, fancy boots. I mean,
That's great.
they own real estate now. I mean, you talk about, the American dream,
But also,
there it
too,
is.
they were fortunate to get aligned with somebody who didn't just say, "Hey, we're closing this day." I mean, obviously, the credit speaks for itself with the results that you have. But there's so many people that in that same kind of interaction with a different person, they'd still be making $10. Well, or
Yeah.
an
20 now or
appreciated
whatever.
value.
Yeah.
But yeah, right.
Yeah. But this what was I going to say? This day and time right now, um, it's so there. I mean, there's so many problems out there, and there's so many opportunities at the same time, because there is so much work to be done in rebuilding all these buildings and stuff.
Mhm.
Every building that we know has to be redone today.
Mhm.
Everyone needs to be cleaned. Every tree in this whole city needs to be trimmed right now. I mean, there's
Mm.
so much deferred maintenance across the
Do you ever
board,
feel
everywhere.
like you're spending decades doing this and it's like you're running in quicksand, or is it more like, hey, I'm doing my part and someone else is going to do their part too, and that's the best we can do?
Both happen. I feel like it, I do feel like some days I want to quit. You know, I do. I have that often, especially when I'm dealing with the politics, that part I don't
Mm.
like, or a neighbor that's kind of criticizing me over something. But I do. At the same time, too, I had a preacher tell me one time, he said, Monty, he said, you're going to drive yourself crazy trying to fix the world. Just go fix the one thing you're working on today. Just live one day at a time, fix that one property at one house, one block, just fix that. And you have to be, it's not going to be perfect. We live
Mhm.
in a fallen world. It's just not going to be. You're going to drive yourself crazy trying to, perfection. What do they say? Perfection is the enemy of progress.
Yeah,
Perfection is the enemy.
and
So,
nothing happens. That's good stuff. That was good for me to hear too. I appreciate that.
yeah.
Um,
But
so I want to wrap up.
we're really the same in Maine as we are in Texas, really. In Skowhegan, I saw those little crappy shopping centers around there.
Yeah.
Same stuff.
Mhm.
We had the
Yeah, I mean, a
same,
lot of this was built around the economic prosperity of industrialization that's gone now, and now how to reinvent yourself. And, oftentimes altruism to me is at odds with capitalism, but it doesn't need to be. If you have the right kind of worldview that can pair, hey, solving some of these problems while also making money. I did pick up in in your presentation where you said, hey, look, we're wanting to make money. Not enough to just do good if you go out of business because you're not making money.
yeah.
So it's not bad to make money, but there are ways to do it, and that also help rise other boats instead of just your own big yacht.
Uh-huh. Yeah,
And
there's a
it
lot
seems
of,
like,
and at the end of our lives, you think about this towards the end, I know we're wrapping up. Just think about this at the end of our lives. You know what? I mean, if you look back, my dad died not too long ago, and he was laying on his deathbed, and I was helping him with the money and stuff. And he didn't have that much. He wasn't poor, but he didn't have that much. But I was thinking about that money, how little it meant, how it just didn't mean anything. But what did mean things is what he did tell me: the rich get richer, and and that's not us. But he also taught me never quit, never be satisfied. No, never being satisfied is a little bit of a problem, but never be satisfied. He taught me, and so those are the things that. And he could fix anything. He was a carpenter who's one of these guys that could fix anything. He could just. But what we leave, I mean, the only thing we take with us. Think about this. The only thing we take with us is what we give away. And and what is it that we want to give away? What do we want to leave? What are we leaving behind? And when you think about that, and you're on that deathbed one day, and this life is this short, it's this short, what is it that they're going to say? What are they going to say about us? What are people going to say about what we left on the earth? So
what did you do with the dash?
Yes.
That's important. Well, I think my last question for you was, if you could leave community leaders or aspiring developers with any one guiding principle, what would it be?
It would be start small and start with the people that you got around you. Start with the people you got, because the locals, I work in, you met me doing my work with Neighborhood Evolution, which is all over the country, and the teaching and coaching we do. So I had the need to go, at one point I wanted to be the biggest developer in the world, so I still have that in me. I wanted to go national, if you will, but I only do the work. I'm committed to the work only in my place, but I'm also committed now to take those lessons that I learned and spread them around the world, not to own places around the world and around the country, but to teach people that the locals, you can do this yourself. Do not wait for somebody to come to town, because there is nobody coming to save you. There is people around you.
The economic development of now is empowering individuals like the work you're doing to be the economic prosperity that we want to see in the region, not trying to land a big Walmart to come save the day, which never saved the day anyway.
Or the big developer who comes to town to build a big apartment building in town, and then they're gone. And they come to town and wine and dine you. Okay. And then next thing you know, they've sold the project even before it even got built to somebody else, and they're not even here. And so they're not, it's the same thing in an owner occupied neighborhood and a renter neighborhood. It's got to be probably better if it's mostly, owner occupied. Not that all renters are bad, but renters ought to be spread out into littler sections and not all in one big thing. I think that everybody ought to have a couple of renters, and then our affordable housing would be solved. If we all had 2 units onto the end of our house, all the housing problems would be solved.
Yeah. Creativity rules the day in your world, it seems, and also is going to be the way in which we address the crisis that exists. Like you said, we don't have a housing crisis, we have an income problem, and you're going around inspiring other people to become entrepreneurs, but also build out both spaces for business and housing that's desperately needed.
That's right.
Monte, I really appreciate you taking the time to join us today, and a couple of really key things in there that hit me pretty good, man. So I appreciate your time and sharing this wisdom with the other people.
Well, that's great. Well, good luck to you up there. I hope to see you again up there soon. I love Maine. It was such a beautiful place. So I look to be there. It's the first time I was there.
We only do these things in, May, June, July, and August, because the report would be different in the fall, winter.
I like the winter up in the north. I'm really one of them freaks. I love to go to Indiana and Michigan and stuff in the winter. So.
Well, I'm sure our paths will cross again, and maybe if this keeps going well, we'll have you on in person for one in the future. I really appreciate your wisdom, Monte, and your passion to helping make this world a better place, and also sharing that with others. Thanks again for joining us.
Thank you for having me. See you later.